North Central Airlines has become my favorite retro airline for two reasons. One, its history is found mostly within the region of the United States that I've grown up in all my life. And two, I have personal connections with the airline, with one relative having been a North Central pilot and another was a flight attendant for a period of time. Since I never got to meet these people, only knowing what they did based off secondhand stories is very important to me. With that in mind, it's easy to see why North Central tops the list for favorite retro airline in my books. In today's video, I am going to cover their operations in Sioux Falls for the more than 2-decade period they lasted here. Let's get started. North Central began service to Sioux Falls in the summer of 1957. This was part of a larger expansion into the Dakotas. Previously, their only service in either state was Grand Forks, a service that dates back to 1954. They also had Fargo for a brief time, but with this expansion, it was reintroduced to the network. At the time, the only direct service out of Sioux Falls was to Brookings, Yankton, and Sioux City, so for this video, you'll see only the direct services labeled. Maps from North Central timetables will be occasionally used to show the wider route network if necessary. North Central's operations at this time were entirely composed of Douglas DC-3 aircraft, which proved vital to popularizing air travel in the years following World War II. By the fall of 1958, Sioux City's direct link with Sioux Falls was dropped, though the city could still be accessed via Yankton. The service was reinstated by the following year. That same year, North Central underwent another massive route expansion, adding numerous destinations in the central and western Dakotas. This prompted several new cities to be added to the Sioux Falls route map, with direct service to Mitchell and Worthington, Minnesota now available. This Worthington service was part of a larger service connecting Sioux Falls to Minneapolis. An additional stop was made in Mankato at this time. Fairmont ended up being added to the route map by 1960. Throughout the 1960s, North Central continued to grow at an incredible rate. New destinations continued to be added across the upper Midwest. Meanwhile, Sioux Falls wasn't seeing many new direct flights being added, as most towns in the area were already accessible via one-stop or multi-stop services. By 1963, Brookings was no longer a direct flight to Sioux Falls, and now could be accessed instead via Mitchell and Huron. Watertown replaced Brookings on the northbound flights. The location of Brookings was moved to accommodate the change, not physically, just on the route map. Major changes were on the way for North Central, as by 1966, a couple major nonstops were added, such as Grand Forks to Minneapolis, and eventually Sioux City to Minneapolis. Initially, these were operated by their newer Convair aircraft, but eventually operations would be moved to the larger and faster Douglas DC-9 jets that were on the way. These arrived into North Central's fleet by 1967, and with that, Sioux Falls gained their nonstop to Minneapolis, which by this point had been in service since the 1940s. See my History of Our Minneapolis Air Service video covering other operators on this crucial air service. Convair 340s in North Central's fleet were now being converted to Convair 580s with Allison turboprop engines, and could now fly faster and farther than their non-converted counterparts. In 1968, Rochester, Minnesota was added to North Central's network, with service between Sioux Falls and Chicago. At the same time, a new direct service to Pierre was added. Moving into the 1970s, North Central now had destinations in numerous states, and their network by this point had reached as far west as Denver and as far east as Toronto. By 1971, Brookings returned to the list of direct services out of Sioux Falls, as it now bridged the gap to Watertown. In return, however, they lost their service to Huron and Minneapolis. Pierre ended up being cut as a direct service in 1972. The city was accessible now via a two-stop service in Mitchell and Huron. And from there, that's where North Central's Sioux Falls flights plateaued at. By 1979, North Central had merged with Southern Airways to form Republic Airlines. While Republic initially kept all of North Central's services, they were all cut during the early 1980s due to Republic's inability to turn a profit. Since it had combined the route networks of two local service carriers and a third in 1980 with their acquisition of Hughes Air West, a combined fleet, and combined workforces, it became far too much for corporate to handle. All of the original North Central services out of Sioux Falls disappeared by 1984, as they had consolidated to two routes between Minneapolis and Rapid City. And that will do it for this relatively quick Retro FSD video this month. will return to an airport update next month, which, depending on the acquisitions I make during the Airliners International 2024 convention in Kansas City, could mean big things ahead for the series. I already have one Retro FSD model on the way from this convention. Stay tuned to see what that model could be. If you have watched another YouTuber, you may have an idea as to what model this could be. With that being said, that is the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.